All right, welcome to Bio with Miss Lisa. I am creating this video for my students as a review for our overview of cellular respiration lesson. I hope that you find it useful. I will be using this diagram here, which I got from a Quizlet, which I found on a Quizlet. I will also be using this diagram here, which is from Flexbooks, okay, to help explain cellular respiration. Okay, so our first stage of cellular respiration is glycolysis. We have 3 stages total: glycolysis, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. Okay, so in glycolysis, what are we doing? We're starting with a glucose molecule. And we're going to break that glucose molecule into 2-pyruvate. Okay, so you have 2-pyruvate. Basically, this has 6 carbons, and if we break it into 2 pieces, we have 2 pieces, each with 3 carbons. All right. So in the process of splitting our glucose into pyruvate, we happen to make ATP, 2-ATP, and we make NADH. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go up to this chart, and we're just going to record our information. So glycolysis, what is our goal? Our goal, take glucose and split it into 2-pyruvate. All right, so we have here, split a glucose molecule into 2 3-carbon pyruvate. Excellent. And so what do we know? We know glycolysis, if we're splitting a glucose, it must require glucose. Okay, so that's going to be one of our reactants. And since we're splitting glucose into pyruvate, a product is going to be 2 pyruvate molecules. Okay, and then what else did we say that we're producing during this process? We said that we're producing ATP and NADH. I'm sorry, so those would be our products. If we are making NADH, that means that we must be using NAD+, and that will be important when we want to talk about fermentation. Okay. All right, so now that we have talked about what is happening in glycolysis, we're starting with the glucose molecule, splitting it into 2-pyruvate. Let's move on to the citric acid cycle. This thing here, it's just telling you how pyruvate, how it changes before it gets to the citric acid cycle. For our purposes, we do not need to worry about it. So we're going to say, okay, where does this pyruvate go now? We've made this pyruvate. Where does it go? It goes to the citric acid cycle. So glycolysis happened in the cytoplasm. Now we are in the matrix of our mitochondria for the citric acid cycle. So what is our goal of the citric acid cycle? We're going to take pyruvate, we're going to break it down further, and in that process, it will create carbon dioxide. Okay. Remember, carbon dioxide is one of the products of cellular respiration. It will create carbon dioxide, ATP, NADH, and FADH2. And that is our goal of the citric acid cycle. Our goal is to break down pyruvate to produce NADH and FADH2. ATP is a bonus, okay? It's a bonus of the citric acid cycle, so you can say it's part of the goal, okay? Carbon dioxide, why isn't carbon dioxide going to be part of our goal? Because it's a waste product. We're not using it for anything, it just happens to form, okay? It's not, required for anything or helpful in any way. Okay, so our goal of the citric acid cycle is really to produce these molecules, these high energy molecules which have electrons that they can give away, and ATP. Okay, so I wrote it down here, break down pyruvate to produce NADH and FADH2 it's for the electron transport chain. So let's talk about that now. The electron transport chain, it's going to use this NADH and this FADH2 from the citric acid cycle, and it's going to use the NADH from glycolysis, okay, to produce 34 ATP. So that is our overall goal of cellular respiration. Our goal of cellular respiration is to break down glucose to make ATP. Okay, so in the electron transport chain, we're going to use NADH and FADH2 to produce that ATP. Okay, so here we have it. Use NADH and FADH2 produced in glycolysis and the citric acid cycle to produce 34 ATP. Okay, so let's just go through our relationships here. So glycolysis, how is it related to the citric acid cycle? Let's think about it. How does the citric acid cycle rely on glycolysis? What does it use that glycolysis produces? The pyruvate. So glycolysis produces the pyruvate, and the citric acid cycle uses that pyruvate. Okay, so I wrote it here. What is the relationship, glycolysis and the citric acid cycle? The citric acid cycle requires the pyruvate produced in glycolysis to produce the NADH and FADH2, okay, for the electron transport chain, which is here in our goal. Okay, so what is our relationship between glycolysis and the electron transport chain? What is glycolysis giving our electron transport chain? Glycolysis is giving our electron transport chain NADH. Excellent. Okay, perfect. Glycolysis is providing the electron transport chain with NADH. Okay, and so what is the relationship between the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain? Okay, let's look here. Citric acid cycle, electron transport chain. What is the electron transport chain getting from the citric acid cycle? Oh, it's getting this NADH and this FADH2. Okay, perfect. I wrote it here. Now, why does the electron transport chain need these molecules? We're going to talk about it in our details of cellular respiration. Okay, but essentially they're going to give their high energy electrons to the electron transport chain, and the electron transport chain uses those high energy electrons to produce ATP. Okay. If you want to go through these reactants and products, okay, we have the citric acid cycle. What is it using? What is its reactant? Pyruvate. Remember, it's getting the pyruvate from glycolysis. What is it producing? Well, we said carbon dioxide, we said ATP, and we said NADH and FADH2. All right, excellent. There you have it. And electron transport chain, what did we say that it's using? It's using that NADH and FADH2 from glycolysis in the citric acid cycle. And we said, what is the goal of the electron transport chain? What are we producing? Well, we're trying to produce ATP, so that would be our products. All right, there's one side note about the electron transport chain. In order for it to run, it requires oxygen, and that is why cellular respiration requires oxygen. And what that oxygen is transformed into, it's actually transformed into water, and that is why water is one of our products of cellular respiration if you look at our overview, our equation for cellular respiration. All right, and so here is just a quick chemical equation that I've pulled up. This is our chemical equation for cellular respiration. If you don't know it already, we're starting with sugar or glucose. It requires oxygen for the electron transport chain. What does it produce? Carbon dioxide in the citric acid cycle, water in the electron transport chain, and ATP. All three stages of cellular respiration create ATP, or usable energy for the cell. Energy that the cell is able to do for active transport, for mitosis, and any other cellular functions. All right, thank you for listening. That's an overview of cellular respiration, and I hope it was helpful for you. Bye.